Hello and welcome to another episode of Casting Views with your host. I'm Dan,
And I'm Lou.
and we are a podcast where we talk about anything and everything and the things in between. Excited about today? We've got more guests today, and
We do have more guests.
we're gonna bring them straight in. Actually, we've got Josh and Amanda from Super Familiar with the Wilsons. Hello,
Hello,
Hello.
friends. Thanks for having us.
more than welcome, more than welcome. I think I need to start off though. Last week we said, Lou, didn't we, that we were recording on the hottest day of the year so far.
Yeah, yeah,
And tonight is now the hotterest day of the year so far, isn't it?
yeah. It's the more hot day of the year, unfortunately. Now, I feel like it is true. We don't really deal with hot weather very well in this country because I've got a fan blowing on me right now. I've had ice pops. I think I had about 16 of them yesterday in the space of about half an hour. I just put them down me like it was nothing. It was awful. And then I used some of them for something else to cool somewhere else down. But
You might want to just go straight to
keep
ice.
it classy on casting.
Just
Views.
go straight to
Yeah.
ice.
Well, I've always found frozen peas are quite a good one
This
as
is
well.
a thing I've heard though. They've been telling people to go on the tube with frozen peas up their shirts. I've heard this.
Honestly, I can tell you now, I get the tube to work, and I can safely say that it's when it's hot, it is one of the worst experiences in the world. There's no like I remember I came home in a suit because I didn't get changed. It was a really bad decision. And do you know where like it's almost like you've just had a shower, but in the day, I took my jacket off and my shirt was just sodden through. Like it's not air conditioned. You have to pray that you get a seat with a bit of a draft.
I saw a thing today that only three, I think, lines on the tube are air conditioned, and they're
Yeah.
the newest ones, but the most common ones, yeah, they're not air conditioned, and they are basically, yeah, they are just furnaces, aren't they? I mean, we were in London yesterday. Fortunately, it wasn't too bad. But this is what I was going to say to you, Josh and Amanda. I mean, I've relented as well and got a fan because you don't want to see me basically shimmering by the end of this episode, which I was last week.
Looking like a Twilight character.
Yeah, the thing is, Josh, I've been telling you obviously why it seems like it's anarchy and chaos in this country when we have heat is because we're just not geared up for it. And I was saying to you, our houses built with the sole intention of keeping heat in. So for you over there, I mean, we're going to reach, I think it's 102, 103 tomorrow. So is
Christ.
that not like a nice day for you in Florida?
Here's the thing: there's not a house in Florida that doesn't have air conditioning. I mean, of course there are, but I mean, this is a thing that is baseline for our country. You see here that we've got ceiling fans in every room. I don't understand. I do not understand how you can survive in 102. Now, 102 presumably is outside, so that means it's hotter inside your houses.
Yeah.
Now,
Oh,
is that
100%.
102 like actual? And we must say that we're speaking in Fahrenheit, right? Because you're not going to ask me to do Celsius. So is that 102 straight up temperature gauge, or is that heat index? Like what it feels like?
Oh,
No, it'd be the temperature.
I don't
Wow.
know that they understand this
Okay.
language.
Do you understand that? So this language here means it is actually 98, but the heat index, because of our humidity, can be 107, 108. So while the actual reading is different. So but their country was built way pre-global warming. I mean,
Well, surely they've replaced houses as they've gone.
I mean, you're going to have to. Because what I read something that said this is the coolest summer on record for the rest of our lives. This will be the coolest summer on record
Wow.
for the rest of our lives.
Well, our aircon up till now has been open a window at the front of the house, open a window at the back of the house, and that's been our aircon. That's how we've cooled
There
down.
are places in the States, though, like up north, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Minnesota, up near Canada, where it's not the norm necessarily to have central air. Heating, yes, right? And then we do see when we have really hot summers or heat waves, you do see increased incidence of people falling ill or fatalities. So we have it, just not, we're all here in Florida just really super prepared for this. Although like idiots 2 or 3 weeks ago, we decided this will be a really great time to take the kids to a theme park and went to Universal, and the heat index was 107. We lasted about 2 hours and the children started saying, "Can we leave?" So when the kids are asking to leave, it's just bad.
Yeah.
Can I just let me lighten it up a bit, because you
I
just
just
said
talked about people
fatality.
dying. I
Jesus
did.
Christ.
It happens.
Listen,
I need to prepare
you
our
need
friends.
to take the lemons and make lemonade. So you need to find creative ways to make this heat work for you. So, for example, I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of a low country boil here in the States. This is where they get all sorts of great seafood ingredients, peas, carrots. They put it in a giant.
No one has ever put peas or carrots in a seafood boil. And so we're going to have
Right.
some Americans, if you have American listeners, absolutely revolting. It's
Anyway.
potatoes and corn.
Yes, and different. So, but the idea is that you put it in a whole big thing to boil. All these wonderful ingredients, the flavors. So, what you need to do is you need to coordinate with your office mates as you're all coming to the tube. You bring peas up your shirt. You bring potatoes up your shirt. Someone else brings the lobster, the shrimp. Once you get to the office, all these things are cooked. They're ready. You pull them out of your shirts, put them in a pot, and bam, bam.
With just that little extra.
Lunch for
Well,
everyone.
no, you keep them in the packaging. I'm not a Neanderthal.
Oh, I was thinking extra seasoning.
Right.
Jesus.
We've coordinated here because the next 2 days are going to be the hottest. Then it's going to tail off. But so we've actually, because we've kind of got like an open kitchen, dining, living area, we've said, right, we're not cooking for 2 days. So we plan ahead and say, right, what meals are we going to eat? That's not going to use the oven, not going to use the stove. We've done that. I was actually going to go into the office for the 2 days, but then I thought, brilliant, aircon. But then I've got like about an hour's journey by car, and I'm thinking, what if there's accident on the motorway, which there are frequently. I was thinking I'm not going to be stuck in that car for an hour, so no, I'm going to work from home. Got a new fan sorted. I'll stick a lobster up under my arm and a bag of peas under the other one, a la Josh.
Make sure the lobster is no longer with us, though. You don't want a live lobster up under there.
I'll tell you, give it 4 hours. Room temperature is also going to be done. That's going to be considered done.
So
That's actually remind me. Oh, sorry, Amanda. I was just going to say, go back to your question. Yeah, I reckon inside the house we are probably looking at anywhere between. Well, I'm going to do this in centigrade now. I don't know how to work it out. I had the Fahrenheit ready for the overall temperature. It's probably an extra 6 or 7, maybe even 10 degrees hotter
Oh my goodness.
inside. So most evenings our thermostat is saying it's like 104.
how
Then
do
I'll
you
just pop
sleep?
outside
I
for a little
can't
bit.
sleep hot. Is it hard to sleep?
Yeah, no
Yeah,
sheet
we
on.
don't really do much sleep. Well, yeah, we don't do sleep in the summer here. It's awful. And you know what? The argument about air conditioning, I always hear it from people. The justification for it here is, oh well, we only get two weeks of hot sun. We only get this. No, it's because we're too cheap. We don't want to buy air conditioners. That's what it is. If we're being honest, that's actually what it is. Because when in reality, train lines here, there's been a warning that's been put out because train lines, they're worried about them buckling and having to cancel trains. But we don't have air conditioning in our homes.
Well,
And
our
when you think
country's
about
shutting
it,
down tomorrow, isn't it?
yeah, this is
Basically,
what I
yeah,
mean.
the
They've
trains
actually
are
actively
cancelling.
told
Yeah,
people, yeah.
yeah. Schools are saying they don't want the children in hospitals. I've heard some hospitals are actually postponing, especially elective
Elective
surgeries,
surgeries, yeah.
because yeah, and it's just amazing.
It
But
is crazy.
it's just getting more and more consistent. I think that's the issue we're having here.
Are either of you handy? Are either of you DIY folks?
I can hold a
Okay,
screwdriver.
so I've always wanted to try this because I was at work. We had a particular room that needed to be utilized, but the AC was broken, and so I looked up homemade air conditioners. Right. So if you look up DIY evaporative cooler or swamp cooler is another
I just
name
want to
for
say
it.
I don't feel good about whatever he's about to tell you.
So basically, what it is it's taking a fan and finding a tube or a container so that when the fan is on, it blows air through a towel or a piece of fabric that has liquid in it, that has moisture, and then the air that comes out the other side is cooled off because of the idea of, again, evaporative cooling. And I really want to try that.
See, now I actually did tell Dan about this because he picked me up the other day from the train station. And so I learned to do it with a wet t-shirt, and then you sit with a fan on you.
Sure,
and
yeah.
then what it is it actually pulls your body heat and it uses your body heat for the evaporation. So technically your body temperature comes down. We do science lessons on
There you go. There you go.
Amazing. So and I can say it definitely works,
so
by the way.
you can
Definitely works.
and I've looked up plans for this. It's not very expensive. You can cool a room. What is this face?
I don't
Stop
trust
shaking your head.
it.
You can cool a room with a little bit more advanced version of what you're talking about.
Just for those people listening, Amanda's been constantly shaking her head throughout this whole
Because
discussion.
I don't want anybody saying I tried this because Josh from Super Familiar with Wilson said that I should, and then bad things happen. But also, they make window unit air conditioners that you just put in an open window and then it will work. So lots of people in like the pre-war buildings in New York and things have them. So you
Oh,
can do this.
see, that's a good point as well, though, because the air conditioning units, I was having a look at them, and they're basically all sold out everywhere now, so there's no chance of getting one. But they also, with the units, do you know where you put them up against the window? I think our windows open differently as well, because we have like the outward ones, and they only accommodate for, do you know, the ones that like slide up, so you sit the panel, and so as a result, you can't even really put it out of a window correctly because they're not made for
So
British
this is an
windows.
opportunity
It's
for someone
terrible.
in your country.
This is it.
Lou,
This is it.
Lou, we've
This
got
is
it.
on
Come
you,
on.
Lou. Don't
We
do whatever he
all
said.
we need
You
to do.
create the window unit.
We're going to machine the bit to go around the window.
Well, before we go into adverts, I'm going to leave with the absolutely fail-safe method is putting your feet in a bucket of cold water.
Mm.
That seriously does do it.
Or a spray bottle of cold water.
Or your head. Your feet and your head are the two primary, and your armpits are the primary places where you dispel heat through your body, out of your body.
There you go.
Might make the pod slightly harder, but next time, yeah, you'll see me Lou, with a fishbowl over.
I'm like handstanding in my room on my Zoom call for work.
Right, let's have a couple of ads and then we'll kick into the episode. First, let me tell you about Newsly. Newsly is an all-in-one audio super app for both iOS and Android. It picks up web articles about trending topics on the web at any given moment in time and reads them to you in a natural human voice. For the first time ever on the internet, the entire web becomes listenable, all in one place. Browse articles from topics you choose and start playing. Stop scrolling and start listening. You can follow any topic as specific as you like, from sports, tech, business, science, Bitcoin, even the Kardashians. It will find you the latest articles on them and read them out to you aloud. And they have podcasts as well. Explore trending podcasts from over 80 countries. Our podcast, Casting Views, is on there too, and I've started using it as my default podcast app. They even have digital radio. Download and use Newsly for free now from www.newsly.me or from the link in the description in our show notes. If you use promo code CASTV, that's CASTV, that you'll also find in the description, you'll receive a 1 month free premium subscription. And now let's hear from good friends of the show, the Fuck My Work Life podcast.
Have you ever had a bad day at work?
Well, the Fuck My Work Life podcast is perfect for you.
Host J and K share listeners' entertaining stories from the workplace, which may have you thinking you don't have it so bad after all.
Find Fuck My Work Life on your favorite podcast platform.
So, this week's episode, What If, week 3, I've kept it even vaguer than usual. Well, specific subject, but then as I normally do, I've kept messaging you all saying, we'll change it to this, we'll change it to this. Initially, I was thinking, what if the cell phone disappeared today? But I'm happy to open it up to kind of other technology. So in my head, the main two are going to be kind of like cell phones and the internet. And I was talking to Lou, and the other day I was around his house, and he, again reminded me that he's younger than me. And so we're going to have different
Very
views.
much younger.
Yeah, he's going to have different views than me. You guys have got kids, so there's probably a different perspective there. Yeah, and happy for this to go wherever it goes. Digression always welcome on this show. So I was just having a quick look today about the cell phone. So just so we can put some things in the timeline. It's actually been going a while, but I'm going to be hypocritical and say the actual kind of modern version isn't that new. So the first genuine mobile phone service was actually in 1946
Whoa.
in Missouri. First mobile car radio telephone service, apparently, AT&T. 73 was the first cell phone call. 79 was the first cell phone service. The UK system launched in 1985. First UK consumer phone was 92, so still before you were born, Lou, right?
Yeah, long before.
The first text message was in 92. And if we really skip down, you had the first, and this now has different connotations now for probably the younger generation, but the first WAP phone was in 1999. First camera phone 2000, first color display 2001. Europe's first camera phone was 2002, and the iPhone was in 2007. So, if you think about it, the iPhone technically then is only 15 years old. So that's what I'm saying. It doesn't doesn't feel that old.
It's weird, isn't it? Because like it feels like Apple dominates the world. Like they do everything, don't they? It's like you can't walk anywhere without someone having an Apple product in hand.
It's interesting though, is I actually know what the first text message was. Yeah, it said new way of communicating. Who dis?
You're such a Lord Jesus.
I thought you were gonna amaze me.
You
I've
were
actually
really
got here
excited,
what it
weren't
was.
you? Yeah.
I was like, no way. I was like, how do you know
I've got
that?
what it was, and I was hoping he was gonna say it. It was actually Merry Christmas.
Oh, that's kind of lovely.
Boring.
It was June.
It took a long time for it to get back.
That's right. That's right. He sent it in June.
Stuck in the servers is what it is.
Yeah, it was Merry Christmas sent to the Vodafone director, but I like your one better. That feels like it should be. But yeah, I was saying to Lou the other day, my first cell phone, mobile phone as we call them over here, I think it was in '99. So when I was how old was I in '99? No, it's actually before that. Sorry, it was in '97. So I got my first cell phone when I was 19, 20,
Mhm.
which feels quite old. But Lou, I think went, no way.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, that is
Since then, it's been
refreshing.
a staple of my life ever since. So yeah, so the last however many years, but yeah, the last 20 odd years, it's been a staple of my life. So
I think that was probably mine. I graduated college in 97, and I think that so I was like 21, right? And I think that's when I got the first one. The first one I used was probably 95-ish. I was dating a guy who I was driving back and forth like an hour to school, and so he gave me his, but it was still the one that had to plug in, and like it looked like
yeah.
Skolder. Nope. Mulder and Scully. I said that wrong.
So mine was probably around that time as well. And the place I work got us cell phones, and it was the kind that had also a built-in walkie-talkie feature.
Were
Were
Are
those
you aware of
Nokias?
these? Yeah, Nokias.
It was the
yeah,
Nokias, yeah.
Are you aware of this? That weirdly they
I
felt it
think I
necessary.
remember now.
Yeah, they felt it necessary to not only be able to call, but also to walkie-talkie someone, which set me up pretty early, being annoyed by people who talk through their speaker to other people rather than doing it discreet through.
Yeah.
By the way, I hate that. I hate when
Yeah.
people are in a room and they're on speakerphone. Lou, tell me you don't do that.
No, never. But do you know what it is as well? It's weird, like how freely, like sometimes you can hear discussion because some people have like absolutely no shame in the discussions that they're having on the telephone. It could be like doctor's appointments. Oh yeah, I've got this issue going on. The doctor's like, well, I don't know why that's green.
Yes.
And like you hear, yeah, no, I can't be doing it. Can't be doing it.
You know what people aren't aware of, and I just recently became aware of because it happened at work. People don't understand how loud their cell phone conversations are that are piped through Bluetooth through their car speakers.
Oh
Yeah.
yes, 100%. Oh my god, amazing! You can pull up at traffic lights and you can fully hear. It's almost like the speakers on the outside of the car. It's unbelievable. And so that's the thing. I started not using my Bluetooth in my car, and solely because of the purpose of like I actually don't know if people can hear
Yeah.
the conversation
Yeah,
that I'm
they
having
will.
outside,
They
just
will.
sat in this car park. Yeah, this is the thing. So I was like, no, I can't risk it. But it is true. You do see some belters when
And
you
people
pull up
have
next to
no
someone.
idea.
It works really well for me because I am super nosy and I like to hear everybody's nonsense. But it's bad because I get really distracted and I don't do what I'm supposed to be doing. But
We're going to start a new car game. You know how there's family car games on long road trips? It'll be outside cell phone conversation bingo. So if you pull up to a light and like someone's, breaking up, break up, that's center square, or grocery list. Okay, that'll be an easy one. That'll be on the outside and so and so.
I don't hear them so much at lights, but I hear them like for work I park in a parking garage and people will be parked in the parking space and having the conversation on their Bluetooth. And it's like, you've parked. You can now take it off of Bluetooth and have
Take
a
it off.
private conversation, but you can hear it, echoing throughout.
What really catches me off guard with cell phone users is the ones who have got the microphone on a little lead, like in their headphone, and so they're walking down the road talking at you. So you think they're talking at you, but they're not. They're talking on the phone. It's like all of a sudden you just see this person talking. I'm like, are you talking at me? Am I being rude? Should I be saying hello?
Do you know what it is? It's even worse now because people have got like AirPods and the wireless ones which you talk through. So the other day there was a guy that had walked like directly up to me and he was just like, "Oh yeah, not bad, mate. You all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm all right." And he just wasn't talking to me. And then I was like, "I feel
You feel
like,
dumb.
I feel like the crazy person."
Right.
It's just the evolution though of Bluetooth earpiece. So do you
Mhm.
remember everyone walking around with those Bluetooth
And they like with your
earpieces?
finger up against it. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing is again, it just shows you how Apple takes things and makes them cool. Because I used to think that people who had the Bluetooth earpieces were such knobheads, right? But
Good word.
the little AirPods, everyone's got them, and it's cool and it's expected, or people don't even notice it.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's true. The marketing's amazing.
I remember loving my first phone, even though it had a pull-out aerial, and the reason why it had the Monty Python theme tune, and I would play, the pull-out aerial and the Python theme tune, and that was it. I was set. I got it because I was going to uni, and it was a bit further away, so I got it just in case the car broke down or anything. So even then, it was kind of more out of a concern if anything happened rather than needing it. And if we're talking kind of about what would happen if it disappeared, I was speaking to was on Antonio's episode recently. We were talking about films from the summer, and I was saying I picked Stand By Me, not because I was born in that era, just reminded me of a time when I was a kid. My mates would come round, we'd get on our bikes, and my
Mhm.
mum wouldn't see me till 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock that night. She wouldn't be worried. You just rock up when you rocked up, and that was it. And now, I mean, fortunately, I didn't kind of grow up like that, but Lou, and I'm assuming for your kids, you are not keeping an eye, but you want to keep in touch. You want to make sure they're okay. And I'm guessing a lot of your communication day to day is going to be just checking the kids are all right, or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you
No,
could
you're
tell us
right.
if.
No, that's right. That's correct. As soon as we can put a little GPS location collar on the kids, the happier I'll feel.
Well, the 15-year-old. So we have, because I mean, we pay for her phone. We have, location sharing on that phone, and it's not meant to control her, but when she and her friends are out, I will randomly just check in to see, are they where they say they are, which they are, or I can kind of like track their progress to, okay, now I need to go pick her up because I've seen that she's like, moved into whatever store it was. But I mean, and I'm planning on subversively keeping that until she, is like in her 30s and is revolting against it. We were having this conversation with our sugar-coated murder friends, and they were saying
Oh,
their
yeah.
kids are in their 30s and they still have it. So, yeah, I mean, as long as I'm paying for your cell phone bill, I can find out where you are.
Can I just go
That's
back
fair
to the
enough.
idea of movies? I feel like, and I don't watch horror movies, but I feel like any horror movie today first has to somehow deal with disabling the cell phones before you can have a plot
Yeah,
that will work.
absolutely.
Because think of all the horror movies from the past; most of them would not work if cell phones existed. Oh, we're trapped in the car. Oh, okay, but we'll just call someone right here.
What if you don't have signal?
Huh?
That
See,
happens.
right,
It
but see,
is
that's the
no,
thing.
no, but that's what every modern film does now, isn't it? All of a sudden, you've got protagonists stuck in a dodgy situation. What's the first thing that happens? No
Yeah,
mobile
yeah.
signal.
This
That's
movie
it.
sponsored by
Always the
AT
first
and
thing.
T.
Yes,
It has to
because
be.
I don't know if you have AT&T over there, but the coverage is
Jesus.
awful here. I mean, that's what we have, but cool.
Me and my partner, we were watching Stranger Things recently, and it's set in the mid 80s, and she was saying, well, that wouldn't happen now because they would just text them to say
Right.
meet me there, and that wouldn't
Exactly.
happen
See,
now.
there
And
you
I'm
go.
saying, I know.
Will, where are you? So I just started Stranger Things. Like, we don't watch it, and the 15-year-old has watched it numerous times. And so on Thursdays, our older boys come, and Josh and the older boys watch something, and she and I are always watching random things. She's like, Mommy, watch Stranger Things with me. And we've watched the first 2 episodes, and now I can't wait until the next Thursday. Like, I'm like, this is cool. I want to be into this
It's great.
because of, I mean, I was young in the 80s, but I mean, it still feels familiar. Uh, but yeah, it would. So I'm not very far along. I'm only season 1, episode 2, but I would be texting the upside down. Where are you? Come back.
Um, Luke, I'll just ask you then before I say something about phones. Can you remember when you got your first one?
I think it probably would have definitely been when I was at secondary school. So that probably would have been like mid to late 2000s.
So that's from 11 to 15 years old here, isn't it? Secondary school.
Yeah, yeah. So that period of time, and it would have been, do you know, one of those like, I think the first one I had was like a thing from my mum and dad when they
Mhm.
changed phone. I think I had a Motorola Razor.
Mhm.
Ah, yeah,
They
I
were
had one of
iconic
those.
at the
Yeah.
time.
Yep.
I feel like everyone at some point owned one. You could go into any person's house and open the drawers full of old tech, and there has to be a Motorola Razor in
Why
that.
do we
in
keep
that,
the old tech?
in that drawer? Well, I've always said
Because
that
it
in
lasts.
reality, mobile phones. Yeah, this is true. Yeah, you've got Nokias that were built 20 years ago that are still
I had a Nokia
still ringing.
3210. I had two. The only reason I lost the first one was I think it went down. I think I dropped it on the floor and it just smashed the screen. But the Nokia 3210 was a beast of a phone. Really, really was.
You can like steamroll it and it'd
Well,
still
and you
work.
can with the iPhones. I don't know of other phones, but you can with the iPhones, even if they don't have service, they will still call emergency. If they have battery charge, they will still call
Oh, right,
emergency
right.
services.
Oh yeah, because I think you can, irrespective. They tell you to dial because they are built to dial out, irrespective
Mhm.
of what signal you've got,
Mhm.
basically. But cool features as well, to be fair.
There were so many attempts at making the phones funky as well. So like the Razor, I remember, was really sleek, really like
Yeah.
sharp screen. I think it was the Sony Ericsson, and I think in America it was a W600, and my over here it was a 550. It was the first Walkman branded phone because they put a digital radio in it, and it spun around. So rather than it being like a clamshell, you spun it,
Oh.
and it was bright orange, and it had the multicolored fascias, which was cool just for that.
See, because on my second phone was a Sony Ericsson Walkman W580i. I still remember that phone as probably my most fond one, but it was a slidey one and it had like the media player, and then when you slid it open, the back was like some like fluorescent blue color. It was so I was so cool at school for like a whole 2 days when people found out
Did you
that I
just
had
like
that
randomly pull it
phone.
out and show people, even if you weren't on it? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, because I didn't have
That's
friends to
what I
text at the time, so I just needed an excuse. Yeah, see, I didn't have friends at the time, so I was just like, just going to cheeky change my wallpaper and see if anybody notices. Because you couldn't do anything else on them. You're on a pay-as-you-go contract. It costs you about £6 to connect to the internet at the
So
time.
speaking of paying as you go, so I thought that I was super smart when I got my first cell phone and had cheated the system, because whatever I had, the first minute was free if it was an incoming call. And I had a 2-hour drive home. So I had a friend that would call me. We'd talk for 58 seconds. We'd hang up and they'd call back, and we would do this for 2 hours on my drive home.
That is a great hack.
I was going to say a couple of observations, and then actually we'll talk about. You just reminded me something about a contract. I love this. We're going everywhere.
You said we could.
Yeah, no, brilliant. No, absolutely. And right at the last 5 minutes, we'll say, what if they disappeared? The Nokia was brilliant, especially the early phones, because one, it had Snake on it, and so it was a really expensive
Oh.
way of playing Snake, and you could do your own theme tunes, your ringtones. I don't know if you remember that.
You could download them. We had something here. You might have had it there. LimeWire. Did you have LimeWire?
Yes,
Where you could
Oh
like
my god, LimeWire.
down
That murdered so many computers
right,
here.
but you could like somehow attach whatever LimeWire you had downloaded to a phone somehow. That was a thing.
What I was going to say was now contracts now for phones are brilliant. It's unlimited data, unlimited minutes, unlimited text. But back then it wasn't. It was yeah, you had a contract, but you paid for it. And I remember the day when it really dawned on me was when I met my partner, my girlfriend, and the first bill after that almost tripled.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that was when my dad said, right, you're paying that bill, and it's like, yep, fair enough.
See, you didn't have the 58-second hack. I mean, that's real commitment to wanting to have a conversation with somebody.
That's impressive as well, because at the time as well, it wasn't as easy. I guess you would have had to have been looking directly at the screen to count your 58 seconds. That's
It
true
wasn't safe.
dedication.
I
from
was
you and your
driving.
friend
It
right
wasn't safe.
there. Hang on a minute as well, but even with the driving thing, what was the trend where phones just went in cars throughout like the 80s and 90s?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
every posh car had a car phone, and nowadays you'll get 6 points if you pick your phone up at some traffic lights.
Well, we used to let children ride around without being, in car seats. So
That's true.
Oh, this is also true. Seatbelts
Mm-hmm.
were a suggestion as well, I guess, back then.
My thing about my first observation I was going to make is if we got rid of phones would be, and Lou, I think this is me and you, the Wilsons, you could come in after. We'd have to start talking to people, because I think now most people you're going to text each other, right? Text, WhatsApp,
Yeah.
etc. So Lou, if I think we've said before, but if you were going to meet up with your friends or your family, it's going to be a text, I'm going to guess, or a WhatsApp.
Yeah, 100%. Like I just recently, last Saturday, went and met up with a friend I haven't seen in a couple of months, and it was literally 4 text messages. And he went, "You doing anything Saturday?" I went, "No." He was like, "Do you want to go for dinner here?" And I went, "Yep, see you there." And that was it. That was the extent of the conversation. We were both met up, spent 8 hours having dinner, and then in the pub. But yeah, I guess you'd have to turn around and use the house phone to turn around and ring him and hope that he was in. And then you'd get his mum, and his mum would be like, "Oh, do you want? Yeah. Can you please put Tom through? Yeah, please." And then you'd have the conversation. And they'd be moaning at you to get off, so the bill didn't go up, I guess.
Josh Vanta, do you tend to use your phone, like texts or messages as your main form of communication?
I don't like to talk on the phone.
Did you though, like in the 70s? And no, you were young. I mean, you weren't talking on the phone in the 70s. Did you in the 80s?
No, I've never liked talking on the phone. So I'm much more likely, given the choice, to text someone.
I agree, because I think that in reality, a conversation on the phone is a little bit more difficult, irrespective, because it's kind of like you have to go through the whole spiel. So, like with me and my friend, we would have had a conversation, and in reality, it's like, do you just want to meet up the pub because we'll just
You'll
have this
talk there.
conversation
Right.
there
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
person? Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that's probably what it promotes, if that
But
makes
it
sense.
feels ruder, doesn't it? Can you imagine calling someone up saying, "Pub at 6? Yeah," and hang up? You wouldn't do that.
No.
Yeah, we did a very awkward comedy bit where we basically did text conversations as if they were on the phone, and we played it on our show. And I will never play it again, but it underscores the fact that it doesn't work. It would be weird and abrupt with long stretches of not talking to each other, and then it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work.
No, and I actually just recently had a conversation with one of my closest friends. I mean, conversation via text. And I mean, we've known each other for 20 years. We are very close friends, and we quarantine kind of just did everybody in. And so we would go stretches without talking, and then we'd talk via text. And she said to me recently, "Well, I guess that our relationship just exists via text now." And I'm like, "I thought that was understood. You want to talk on the phone?" Like, it felt really, really weird. And I can say this because she's not gonna ever listen to this. She doesn't. No,
painful.
I didn't mean that about
Hurtful.
you. I just meant she doesn't listen to us.
Jeez,
No,
Jesus,
she doesn't listen
God.
to us. But it was just, it like kind of threw me. Like, wait, I thought we all just understood we don't talk on the phone anymore. Like,
Don't you think, though, also, it's easier to say embarrassing or hard things through text than actually having to vocalize it?
yeah, but it can get really
That's
confused.
true.
I mean, it can get pretty
That's true.
tricky though, because nuance isn't conveyed via text. I feel like we need a font for sarcasm. We need a font for different things, and so we can understand it.
Yeah.
The only people that I tend to call are the kids. If I'm driving and I'm checking in to see if they're, how they are, I tend to call. But that generation, Lou, I don't know how old you are, but our teens generation in our early 20s, they all FaceTime, which is weird to me. Like, I will FaceTime my kids, but I don't need to FaceTime my friends and watch them while I'm talking to them. But that seems to be their mode of communication.
One step beyond, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't really use FaceTime either, to be honest with you. I mean, probably when I was at university, like if a mate had gone out, you'd get like a drunk FaceTime from the middle of a club where it'd just be screaming, blaring music. You can't really hear and or see them, and they just wanted to do it because you didn't happen to go out that night and they miss you. But apart from that, I've never really used FaceTime for anything. I think if I FaceTimed any of my friends, they'd be like, "Are you all right? What's going on?" It'd be like a concerning thing. It'd be a way for them to pick up, because I think they definitely would, because they'd think something was up. But yeah, I think they would think it was weird.
Texting, though, also gives you the beauty of waiting to respond as well.
Yeah.
Unless you
Yeah.
have your read receipt on.
I don't think you necessarily, unless it's an immediate question, you can afford to take a bit of time. But could you imagine on a phone call someone asking you something, and then you say, right, you wait 5 minutes, and then you come back with an answer? The only benefit I can see at the moment to having a conversation, other than obviously the social thing, is at least you don't get, and I'm going to say it as part of the joke, but you don't get ducking autocorrect on a
Oh
phone
my gosh,
conversation.
right? I am never going to mean ducking. Like, it's never a thing
Yeah.
I'm going to mean.
Never have said that word.
Yeah.
Can I just say as well, I always thought that, when your phone autocorrect to ducking, for some reason, my mind always put it together as like something to do with actual ducks, as in animals, as opposed to the action of ducking.
Oh, I always thought it
in,
was
like,
animals
as in-
too.
I thought it
Yeah,
was
no,
animals.
it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
ducking.
Alright.
Yeah, it autocorrects to ducking as in like ducking to avoid something, as opposed to something to do with ducks. I honestly, my mind was blown, and then I thought about it. It's just like, I've been such an idiot this whole
Well, now
Well,
you
I
just
time.
think
made
we've
us
all
all
said
feel
that.
like
Yeah,
idiots
yeah,
because we
yeah.
didn't know either.
Well, think about it though.
Well, the amount of angry texts. Well, I was going to say the amount of angry texts I've sent have been spoiled because it's changed a word to something wrong. It's just,
Well, it's duck you, right? But if there's a comma, duck comma you, then that's correct. That means that you need to.
Yes, duck you.
I guess the difficulty that we had as well that youngsters won't have is like Lou. I think you referenced when I was young and you had to call up your mate. You did have to speak to often the parent of the house to ask for Jimmy or Johnny. It was even worse if you were trying to speak to a girl. And it's that felt
Oh,
really
hello,
awkward.
Mr. Jones. Could I please speak to your daughter? It's about revision. It's about the maths exam we've got on Monday.
So now you can just
Yeah.
talk to who you want in a number of ways now directly.
Although a little bit with the texting and like WhatsApp, like at the minute, you could probably look through my WhatsApp and there's probably like 6 conversations that I haven't gone back to yet. And that's, I feel like one of the negatives is because in reality, a conversation that should take you probably no more than 30 minutes if you were to have it on the phone now takes 2 weeks because you read a text and you're like, okay, I'll get to it because you're doing something, you're in the middle of something. And then it's 3 days later and you're like, shit.
And then you have to make
They
an
think that I've
excuse for
avoided
why
it.
you didn't respond. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, but then in reality, it's like, it shouldn't be like that because irrespective, I don't have the time to orchestrate a telephone call with you because you're both busy or whatever it might be. So yeah, I think that's the only thing. But now, no, I've got a friend and we're really, he's like literally my best friend. But conversations with me and him might be like send a message, day goes by before responding. But it's because you're both busy, you've got stuff on. That's why it takes us about 6 months to meet up. Because he says, do you want to go to the pub? I respond a week later saying, what time? He responds a week later saying 6. And I say, no, can't do 6. And it's October before I've even decided on what time we
He's
can go
not
out.
even exaggerating because I can send Lou a text on Monday about the pod and it'll be Saturday night. Yeah, I'm good for Sunday. And he'll be,
Yeah, I'm good.
Good thing I wasn't
I
worried.
sent that on Monday. Yeah.
I think that's probably my biggest negative.
Yeah, but and the inverse of that, because I've got threads going with all sorts of people. There is no way that I will remember something that I said to you last week, right? But if it's in text, bam, I can just refer back. Oh, this is what they're talking about. I can continue this conversation. That ain't going to happen to, with a person on the phone where I don't even remember where I put my keys this morning.
Unless it's that.
It's also good if you're having an argument.
Yeah, well.
Because you could pull up the receipts. You're like, well, in actual fact, on July 17th, you said.
Unless it's that Twitter feed that you all have together with all those other pods, because if you're gone for 30 seconds, you've lost everything. I mean, it just.
You can't search easily. Well, not on the phone anyway.
But I do want us to hit on this idea if the cell phone or the smartphone disappeared. So I made this list, right, of things that the cell phone or the smartphone, all of the things in our lives that it's replaced. Now, I'm sure that both of you have done the same, right? Like in preparing for this?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, not to the same extent. You're really well prepared.
I had a moment. So, but do you mind if we kind of go through these?
No, go for it.
Yeah,
So, and I'm sure that as you've made a list, that there are. I mean, maybe you picked up all of these. Like, obviously, you don't need to have a wristwatch anymore. Now, Apple Watch aside, you don't need to have any other sort of timekeeper available. Don't need a fax machine. Don't need music player, right? Walkman.
Yeah.
Don't need
true.
DVDs or CDs. Don't need a radio. There are some instances where you wouldn't even, depending on your level of technology use, where it could replace a laptop. Now, not for
100%,
not for necessarily podcasting or any sort of advanced work, but in general, these little things can do most of the same things that laptops can do. Now, my list is rather long, but the way that I want us to think about it is, even with that, how much money is tied up in all of those things? Because I think that people think about, oh, these cell phones or especially the iPhones are so expensive. But if you think about all of the money that you're not spending on these other things, seems to me that we're probably coming out ahead.
Yeah, I agree. And I know, do you know what it is as well? I feel like, with technology, in the grand scheme of things, I feel like technology has relatively got cheaper. So whilst a brand new iPhone nowadays, I think if you look at like a 13 Pro, whatever it might be, it's probably about
Mhm.
£1,000 here in reality. When you look at that in context as to what things actually cost, so like you said, all of these individual items where it came to, you used to either carry around a CD player with you, and then you'd have a fax machine or a radio, whatever it might be. All of these things in reality relatively were really expensive items to have when you had your original Walkman players or even cassette players or home stereos. I remember stereos at home used to be like hundreds and hundreds of pounds if you wanted a half decent one, just so you could play CDs on them. Whereas now it's a case of an iPhone and a Bluetooth speaker. You don't need your £1,000 CD collection when you can get it all for $7.99 a month.
Having this conversation with my partner the other day that, she's not technically minded. So, I'm kind of teaching her how to play music through the Bluetooth speaker, through the phone. But I do miss, though, having a stereo in the house. I used to love, as someone who's really into their music, I found having a stereo was the centerpiece with like your music collection. But what you're saying is absolutely true. But also the space it saved. So I'm now looking around the house and thinking, where would I put that stereo? Where would I put that system? I don't, I wouldn't know where to do that anymore.
Also, think about this. Let's say you have your big like boombox or stereo system. Which, by the way, when you said £1,000, I was thinking that the boom boxes weighed, some of them, about £1,000. But you're paying all of that money for something that you can't take with you everywhere, right?
Yeah,
So
this is very
Yeah.
true.
not only do we have all of these things here, but we can take them all with us wherever we go.
But this is the thing as well, because even on that note, where you can carry it with you, for me, I think that what phones have actually done is, when you look at it, even from the perspective of convenience in life, you look at, okay, you're in a shop, they don't have something in stock. What would you do? Immediately look online. It's
Yeah.
ordered. It's there. In reality, it's taken away your real need to go to shops because you can do online food shopping. Amazon basically has everything that you need, but other stockists are available. We haven't had sponsorship yet. And all of these retailers, and in reality, it's also giving you the convenience and the freedom of not having to wander around shops because you actually don't need to. And even if you are out and about, you think, oh, I've forgotten something. That's it. Your phone ordered next day. That's what it is. And that's probably a way that we've adapted and just not realized the convenience that's kind of come with the mobile phone in that respect.
Absolutely. And you don't need to go to the post office anymore because we have email and different
Yeah.
ways of communicating.
But you would have that on a computer. That's not singular to a phone.
Right. But I mean, I'm just saying, that,
But to add to your list, though, Josh, another key one, more so nowadays in the last few years, are people using their phones as sat navs.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Or even using it as cameras as well.
Yeah, they're still not cheap sat navs anymore. If you want a decent one over here, yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah, that's the thing. And again, even with cameras, like people used to go out and spend hundreds, if not thousands of pounds on, DSLRs, when in reality, if you're just like a
iPhone
photographer that just
camera.
wants to take a picture of some pretty flowers,
Yeah.
an iPhone camera will really do you a job. You don't need multiple bags with you. And do you remember there was a period of time where you needed a video recorder and a camera?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Because
Yep.
they wouldn't do the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Well, Josh has a DSLR, and I kept I would for the longest time can you get out your fancy camera? He's like, Amanda, my phone takes just as good pictures as this camera, and so I don't even know where it is.
It's funny that you mentioned that, though, because what I was going to do, I was feeling really ambitious, is I was going to price out everything on my list here, right? But I didn't do that because that would have taken a lot of work. But just this idea of cameras, right? So you spend, let's say, I mean, DSLRs can, like you said, cost a lot of money. But even if you get your garden variety $50 one, right? Or $100 ones, you take pictures. Let's say we're in the era of still needing to develop film. 36 shots on a roll of film takes about 10 to 15 bucks to develop. Then you got to have the scrapbooks to keep them in, right? So I priced all of this out. On my phone right now, I have 4,208 photos. And this is after I went through and deleted a whole crap ton of duplicates and screenshots and memes and whatever. To develop those, it would have cost about $1,168.88. Then, to have enough scrapbooks to keep all of those in, it'd be about $450. And then I need to spend about $100 at IKEA to get a nice bookshelf to put all of these scrapbooks on.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, to develop all of the pictures on this smartphone, it would be $1,768.88.
That is some impressive work.
Yeah, look at
And
that.
also, yeah, unbelievable. Because I think now, do you know what I'm doing? My grandmother has loads of photo albums. In my mind, I'm just thinking she's got like $6,000 worth of photographs.
That you then need to digitize. So you're going to
Yeah,
reverse
yeah.
engineer this and put it onto the cloud.
I had to do that years ago because obviously, you know, me and my partner would go on holidays and it was, you know, the film cameras. And when we ended up going digital, didn't then even look at the photo albums anymore. So I did go through the painful process of scanning each and every photo in and creating my own virtual album. And it was that was painful.
Now, it sounds to me like, sorry, you have to go down here. You don't fit here. You don't. No, you're fine.
That's the dog she's talking to, not
Yeah,
not
sorry,
not
that
any,
that
any
was
one
a
of
little.
us. Yeah.
It sounds he thinks he's a
Lou,
podcast
Lou,
pup.
you need to get down. You don't
That's
fit
right.
here in our
No,
lap.
He's he has his own social. He's the podcast pup, so he feels like he needs to
Oh
be
yes,
here.
yes, he is. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like we're all making arguments for the benefit of them. I can make an argument for both of them. So also they're really handy when you're trying to entertain a 5-year-old in a restaurant and you need to have peace for the people around you, and so you'll put on YouTube or games or whatever. I get really frustrated when we see stories and media and headlines and just people personally that will say, well, in my day we never blah blah blah, right? We wouldn't have given children this. So you see all these
Yeah.
things that the screen generation are degenerates and the world is falling apart. However, you didn't have them. Had you have had them, you would have been doing this, because this was the generation that gave their children like alcohol to sleep and things, right? So I get a little frustrated with the
What?
dude, like cold syrup stuff with alcohol to make the children sleep. I don't have my phone, which is kind of ironic for this conversation, but I was going to look it up. There were things in the 50s and the 60s of like really hardcore Benadryl that children were given to kind of control them, right? And make them sleep so the parents could do their thing. I'm just giving my kid like a science video on YouTube, and that's okay. So I can make arguments for that. But then also, as a parent, specifically as a parent or as parents of a teenage girl, it's really hard to be a teenage girl. It's really hard to be a teenage girl when social media is in your face 24 hours a day. And even though social media is not singular to the phone, there's one thing with being on the computer in the office to lying in your bed when you're feeling really bad about yourself and scrolling through all of these things that aren't reality. And that is something that I could argue for. I would be happy if that went away.
See, I've
Yeah.
said, sorry, look, I was just gonna say, I've said multiple times, I would have absolutely hated going through school with social media available. I
Yeah.
mean, school can be tough as it is, and then you throw in social media as well. I do sometimes sympathize with kids these days for that. That is an element of kind of potentially stress and what's the word? Looking at life through a fake lens that we never had to do. Sorry, Lou, what were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. And do you know what it is with the whole social media thing? It's true. It's different to even on a computer, because on a computer you need to consciously sit down, boot it up, and specifically go to a social media. Now, when it's on your phone, it is at your fingertips. You get a notification of whatever you are doing on your phone, you see it. Like, I went through a purge recently. I no longer have an Instagram. I no longer have a Twitter. I no longer have a TikTok. I got rid of all of these things because even for me, I'm 26, by the way, just for for note. Um, for me, I just thought to myself, I was like, I can't be sitting here wasting time looking at people on social media that are just highlighting the best parts of their day. I know that life isn't like that, right? Don't get me wrong. You know, if you've got 100 million quid in the bank and you're on a beach in the middle of the Caribbean every day, fair enough, that is your life. But the average person isn't like that, and I've always had a bit of an issue with people using social media to illustrate all of the perfect things in life. And even when you see it, like, you know, I've looked at like the male fitness industry, for instance. Even when you look at some big companies that have come about into the market in recent years, I won't name them specifically, we don't want a lawsuit. But you've seen like models and they're all jacked guys, and I just think to myself, that's not attainable, because all of these blokes are admittedly on steroids and that sort of thing. Like, it's not a real thing, but it's forced at you all the time. And even when you look at social media, you don't even need to follow these things to have them forced at you anymore. It's on your phone, you scroll three things, and then it gives you something recommended that it thinks you might like because it's listening to you. And that, yeah, it's a dangerous thing. It's a dangerous cycle. So I agree
Yeah, I was gonna say
wholeheartedly.
even me now, my Twitter, I've got a personal account and a podcast one at Casting Views. I barely use my personal one anymore. I use it mainly. I follow a couple of record distributors who I look for, when they're gonna drop the latest record. But the personal Twitter, you follow sports. There's toxic fans, just constantly going at each other. Even video games, the community there could be really toxic. So I barely use my personal one anymore, and it's just the podcast one. Same with Instagram. I've got an Instagram account, but I don't think I've gone onto the profile of that for since I've started the podcast. I much prefer kind of the community, that's garnered in the podcasting world because you can pick and choose almost who you want to see in that. Whereas your private one, if you want to follow things in the outside world, it's often a recipe for disaster.
But I feel like as well, do you not think that without mobile phones, I feel like what we've done in life is lost a semblance of like privacy, I think is what it's done. Because now there's mobile phones have created the ability where I can take a picture of anything that I'm doing there and then, upload it, people can see it. Whereas it never used to be like, even when phones existed in infancy, you would never be able to do that.
Let's say we've lost self-control. I will admit, we've said it before a number of times, I will check my phone constantly now throughout the day. And primarily, again, it's a podcast has got me hooked on doing stuff around that. Can I go a movie, a 2-hour movie, sitting here? If we were at the cinema or with friends, it's different. But if I'm at home, can I go through a 2-hour film without looking at the football scores or an email or something? I'm going to say no, I won't.
Well, and
It's
it's
self-control.
compulsive. It's
Yeah,
compulsive.
yeah,
We
yeah,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. So yesterday we took the little boy to a trampoline park, indoor trampoline park, and I intentionally left my phone at home, right? Because I wanted to see how I felt about it. Now there was a point where I looked at your phone for.
He says to me, "Can I see Twitter?" So he could check the inbox Twitter for you.
But I'll
yeah.
tell you that the only thing, I think that's because I was following a specific thing, but the only thing that was on my mind the longer that we were there was, gosh, I hope that my two older boys don't need to get a hold of me. Otherwise, it was fine.
Well, they started bringing back a couple of years ago over here, didn't they? They called them dumb phones. They started bringing back cell phones that don't have internet connectivity. It is just you make a phone call and send a text.
Oh, that's funny. Dumb phones, smartphones. I just got that. I'm quick. So can I add though that so there it's like this dichotomy, right? Because especially during quarantine. So a couple of our kids identify with the LGBTQ plus community. And as a teen or an older teen going through that, you can connect with people around the world who have the same lenses you have the same experiences you can feel like you are not alone. So I am incredibly grateful for that. At the same time, we have what you're saying, Lou, and I appreciate that lens on the male fitness because I just think about it from the female perspective as a mom of a 15-year-old girl. I think it comes down to media literacy and how we teach our youth. That is my husband pouring bourbon, not peeing, just in case anyone caught that on the audio. I think it comes down to media literacy and how we teach our youth to consume what is in their face all the time. And while it is incredibly difficult, I feel good, and I don't say this to brag because we had nothing to do with this, but our 15-year-old took TikTok off her phone herself. And she said, "Mom, it's just toxic. Like I'm seeing this and I'm thinking that these things are ideals or that they're achievable and they're not. Like I can't achieve this." Now, she still has Instagram, she still has Twitter for a little UK perspective. So for her first concert when she was 7 was One Direction. And so she grew up this One Direction fan. And so she's a really big Harry Styles fan, but she can't stand like Harry Styles straight Twitter because it's very toxic. And so she got rid of her account
Right.
and then opened a new account and started searching for things so that she could find a community that wasn't so toxic. That's not us. She got there on her own, but I do think that these things aren't going away. And so what do we do to help them navigate it?
I think in themselves, these sites aren't aren't bad. I think what it is the cell phone has given everybody, literally everybody, the ability to say what they want when they want, as opposed to it
Yeah.
being a thought out thing. Like Lou, like you said, like for me, if we did lose phones, the biggest thing that would hit me is Josh, as you said as well, that I can use the internet without having to sit at a desk or get the laptop on my lap and log in. But now anyone and everyone can just quickly type in what they're thinking at the time, whether whether they've thought about it twice or not, and that's when you get this toxic, nasty stuff. I mean, I used to be a believer in following sort of people or accounts that you didn't necessarily agree with. Now, I'm not talking about anything horrible or
Hmm.
that, but I used to think sometimes you should be changed. The last couple of years have taught me that no, I don't want that anymore. I just, I just want to enjoy life. Sometimes if that means that, I'm in an echo chamber, so be it. If it means I'm happy there, because just people have just got the ability to, they know they've got in their pocket a device that they can just quickly tap whatever the hell they're thinking, and they just do it. But rather than, I'm guessing, if they did have to think about it while their laptop was booting up for 5 minutes or whatever, they probably wouldn't bother.
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? Like the phone has given you an instant connection to the world. And in actual fact, while I was sat here, I was pulling up some statistics. Now I'm going to expose myself a little bit because it's the comparison between like laptop usage. So my daily average screen time over the course of this week. Now, bear in mind, I don't have Instagram, I don't have Twitter, I don't have TikTok. I watch a lot of YouTube because I don't really do television, to be honest with you. My daily average is 7 hours and 17 minutes. Now, in the grand scheme of things, I don't know how terrible that is. Some people might be listening to this and gone, and some people might have listened to it and gone, wow, mine's 14 hours. How is he only managing that? But in reality, could I consciously see myself after a day at work? Because bear in mind, I don't use my personal phone at work because I've got a work mobile. And could I consciously see myself sat down after getting home from work at a computer for 7 hours using the internet? I couldn't do it because your brain would fry. But when it's at your fingertips, it doesn't feel that time consuming. And that's one of the biggest problems, I think, because I can't imagine what my screen time would have been with all the other social medias thrown in there. It's just absolutely nuts in reality.
Mine is comparable to yours, my screen time, but also I fall asleep with videos playing, like HBO Max or something play, and so I
Yeah.
like to tell myself that some of that I'm not conscious for, so I feel a little bit better about it.
Oh my god, I'm so glad you said that because I fall asleep with podcasts, but my screen time is comparable to that as well. But you just give me an excuse because I'll fall asleep and I'll wake up. Sometimes they'll be playing the next day.
Oh, believe me, I know.
All right, enough
He
with
wears
that.
these he has these fancy like nighttime head, like it's like
Oh, I know what you
know what I'm
mean.
talking about?
Yeah.
It's like a ear warmer, like scarf thing, like a head warmer, but it doesn't make a complete seal. And so yeah, I when I wake up, I'm well aware that the podcasts are still playing.
See, I have to do the same because I've got tinnitus. So at night, I
Oh
put a
gosh.
little earbud in and just put a podcast on. But yeah, sometimes I'll wake up and I normally put the timer on the app to switch off, but sometimes I don't. So I'll wake up and the phone's drained because it's been playing the podcast all night. Yeah.
Just to put a bow on this conversation about Twitter, and you were talking, Dan, about not following accounts that stress you out. I I get special joy now in blocking accounts on Twitter. In fact, I go looking on different threads that I think there'll be a gathering of folks who annoy me, and I'll just block them. So right now, and I don't know if this seems like a large number or not, I actually thought it was more. I have 1,571 accounts blocked on Twitter.
Oh, that's good.
That is
It is
That's good
impressive.
so
going.
much
That's good
fun
going.
because I can't do anything else. So for me, and I'm mashing that screen like it's a big red button and just giggling my motherfucking ass off as
But
I
these
do it.
people
So
don't know that you've muted them
I
or
don't
blocked
care. They
them.
don't need to know.
It's just cathartic for you.
It's cathartic for
It's
me.
the act of doing it, yeah. But that's the thing. I am at the moment though. I'm a kind of addicted to podcast Twitter, which I'm okay with because it's so far so good.
It seems like a kind, supportive place for the
So
most part.
it is out there, it is out there. Like I said, I think I'm being far more selective now, and I think we all are. Lou's mentioned he's doing that. Josh, you've just mentioned you're being extra selective. So I think that's what it's. I think that's what we've learnt now, isn't it? That's the only way you can survive.
The only thing I want to bring up as far as if it all of a sudden disappeared and the fact that it's always available is that it has done a lot of good in exposing the wrongs of society. We're talking about if we're having difficulty with police brutality, or the Arab Spring uprising, where Twitter, I understand, was huge in that. Any of these things, there are now cameras everywhere, and that could be a bad thing. And we've talked a little bit about that, but it can be a very good thing.
You think about how many incidents of again, even when you talked about police brutality, that would have just been missed previously because people didn't have phones immediately in their vicinity, and that's true as well. I guess what phones have done for modern society is to an extent brought a level of accountability just to life in general, because at any moment in time there can be somebody who's got a camera that's filming something that you're doing. And I guess, yeah, it has been a hugely influential thing.
You don't even need your wallet anymore and I've not gone to that step yet of using the phone to pay for things. I don't have cash. Are you the same, Amanda? I don't use cash. And I was thinking, why don't I? So, because then I can forget my wallet at home, because how many times have I done that and then gone without lunch that day, or what have you?
No, so we don't carry cash here either, but I don't know how it was in the UK, but during COVID, places stopped taking cash. Or I mean,
Same
and
here,
COVID
yeah.
is still a thing, but during like the height of it. Or we also had a change shortage. They were saying please don't. So we don't usually carry cash, but also so I do use my phone for Apple Pay. But then you will get to the place where occasionally they don't take it, and then you're just screwed. So you kind of have
Well,
to.
they still have plastic though. We still have credit cards.
But I don't take my wallet. So there are things like when I go to Target, I have my Target wallet on my phone. When I go to other places, I use my Apple Pay. And a lot of times I don't go in. And then still here, I don't know how it is in England. I'm 47 and Target will not let me buy wine without my ID. I mean, and this is just ridiculous. Like, I don't look 21. Please just understand when I tell you. And so you've got to kind of be
Listen, the past 3 years have been difficult on everyone.
like,
So you have some 21-year-olds wandering around.
I mean, and it's 18 there, right? In the UK,
Yeah,
like it's
18,
18.
It is
yeah.
18. But in reality, you'll get served in a pub if you're 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
But-
Like it's
And y'all are Italians, so you get wine in your freaking sippy cups, I'm sure.
Yeah. Do you know what it was? Yeah, dummies dipped in wine. That's what it was. Yeah, 100%.
But having said all this, though, I do remember once when my phone did break and I had to send it in for repair. For those few days, I felt completely lost because I didn't have my music, I didn't have my email on hand, I didn't have my, for that, however long it was, I did feel like, how am I going to cope? At least if you did have those items, and I guess that's the difficulty. I mean, the beauty is you can then pick up another phone if you did do the worst. And Lou, you've gone through a few phones in your time, haven't you?
Yeah, I've gone through so many mobile phones. I think there was 1 year on my insurance. So I had a phone insured while I was at university. I think I claimed on my insurance 6 times.
Other than the things directly on your phone, you could go out and buy a new phone tomorrow and pick up where you left off,
Yeah.
which is a beauty
Yeah,
as
this
well.
is true.
So here's a question: do you know each other's phone numbers?
Oh no, fuck no.
I wouldn't remember your number.
I barely know my number.
Right?
I know your number, but I don't know my children's numbers.
Can I just say as well, do you know what my worst habit is? Is even my contact list now. So I've had this phone for probably 2 years. My girlfriend shouts at me all the time for it. I have barely anyone's phone number saved in my phone. So it just rings and it says 079, whatever it might be. And I just think, oh, I recognize a lot of the last 3 digits of phone numbers. So I'm like, oh, that's my dad. That's my mum. But if anyone needed an emergency contact and they went through my contact list, they'd be like, there's no one there. There's no one there. And I think that's probably my worst habit.
Do you know your girlfriend's phone number?
Oh, no.
No,
Is
chance,
she-
this is
no.
what I was going to say.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say this. You don't need to know. I've been with my partner. We've been together 21 years. I don't know her number because I don't need to.
But when you lose your phone, so Josh gets mad because Josh knows my number, and I know his number, but I have to think about it in his voice from his voicemail. Like I have to
Right.
I have to do it in my head. I know one of the children's phone numbers. I couldn't call the other children.
Oh, I don't know any of the children's phone numbers.
I couldn't call my work. I couldn't do any of that.
When you had to do the old ring dial phone, you had to that those numbers were burnt into your mind then, but now you just have to look up a name, touch it. You don't even see the number anymore. You just look at a name on a screen and just touch it.
Well, and getting
Yeah,
into a little
that
bit
is
of
terrible.
educational stuff, the ring dial thing is like the kinesthetic learning though. So when you put the motion to the number, like it makes it stick a little bit more.
I don't know what you
Well, and
just
you
said.
had to read it. Well, you had to
Well,
read it as well. You had to make sure you did it. Yeah, and that at least helped you. Even though I guess a push button phone.
Well, and so then it becomes difficult, right? When you have young kids going to school, because when we were little, it was like you learned your home phone number. And so the 5-year-old said to me the other day, "What's my phone number?" I'm like, dude, you don't have a phone number. You have my phone number. Here's my phone number. And he was like, "No, but what's my phone number?" I was like, "No,
Do
no,
you all
that's
have?
not
Do
how
you all
it
have
works."
home phones? Do you have phones in the wall?
yeah, we've got like home phones
See,
connected, but they're usually just for people that are calling you to scam you to buy like a dishwasher or something. Usually, aren't
see,
they?
we have.
They're never used for anyone to
We're
call unless
losing
they're
them
70
more. We're
plus.
losing them more, but we still got like the estate where I live is a dead zone for cell phone
Oh,
signal.
yeah.
So you have to your broadband, your utility provider won't not let you have a landline if you're in a bad area for emergency
Okay,
calls.
so interesting. So the
yeah.
last, gosh, for me, it's been a long
We've
time.
not together since we've been
together
together.
since
We've
we've
not
been
had a house
together. We
phone.
haven't had a phone, and then
Wow.
before that, I haven't had a wall phone for quite a while.
But I did. So speaking to Lou's point, though, I did when my mom was living alone. My mom has since passed, and but when she was living alone, we got her a house phone because she couldn't. She was getting advanced dementia. She had a cell phone for a long time, but then she couldn't make it work anymore. So we needed to have the house phone that she could make work. But yeah, that's we don't. Yeah, it's not a standard here in the States anymore.
We don't even have jacks in our house.
But you know what we do have? Central air conditioning.
Air conditioning.
No, like I said, I haven't used my landline for years, but I have to have one, especially here, because of the reception, the signal. Now, a lot of people are dropping them because, especially now with the mobile phone contracts, which are everything's all inclusive and data now as well. Agreed. Why would you need
now,
a phone?
and there was a time where I had a cell phone and I had a landline, right? But I remember I didn't ever use the landline. And whenever that thing rang, it was like the fucking red phone, the emergency red phone on the White House desk, and it scared the shit out of me. And I didn't want to answer it because I didn't know what was going to happen to me.
That's the thing. It's actually true nowadays. If the house phone rings, I'm like, it's either emergency or scam call, but you have to get it because you don't know if it's
could be
emergency.
the emergency, right?
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you get a bloke who turns around and says, "Have you been involved in an accident in the last 3 years?" I'm like, "Fuck off!" Honestly.
When the landline goes, you just look at each other because it's like, it's not for me. It's not for me.
You.
It's like,
You're
who's
not
it
calling
for?
me. I'm not calling you. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I do think with the mobile phone, yeah, I used to remember like everyone's numbers. I could do it, could do it all, but now with the cell phone, I don't need to.
No, you don't
and
need
it's
to.
terrible, but I don't need to. Yeah.
Can I just say, and I've stolen this gag from a British comedian, but do you know you were talking about the phones that did that? And for anybody listening, I'm doing the circular motion. Did they put 99? Well, in the
911.
States, it wouldn't be 999, but our emergency number is 999. Did they still put that at the end? So you had to
Yes.
wait. You go 9,
Yes.
roll back 9. Meanwhile, somebody's having a heart attack, and you're like 9. Next one.
You only had to do 2. You only had to do 2 nines. That was the irony. You didn't have to actually dial the
Oh,
third line.
really?
Yeah, on a
Oh,
lot of
See,
wow.
who
phones you
knows?
could dial that.
Who
Yeah.
knew?
Here in the
Yeah.
States, it's 911. So you did still have to do the 19, but then like you were really close on the 1, so you were
Yes.
fine.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's quick. Yeah, see,
Yeah.
that's what it is as well. Really, it should have been 111
Right?
at the time.
Those old phones, though, especially if you got the wrong number, like you weren't concentrating and you dialed, you'd have to start again, and that was the really frustrating bit because you'd have to wait for that dial to return back before you could hang.
It's just funny because I wonder how many people making a call screwed up the number and there was no it's like fuck this shit. I don't need to talk to this person enough to have to go through this frustration again.
How many numbers do you have in the States in like a mobile
10.
number? 10. What's ours here? I don't know. I don't know any phone numbers. That's why I don't know how many numbers there are in our numbers. Do we have 10 or 11?
11, mine's 11. So I had to count that on my
11,
fingers.
11.
Yeah.
For us, it's three
cool.
digit area code and then the number.
Yeah, so the area
Oh
code
yeah,
is
see, so our landlines.
specific to like where you are, and then the numbers, the 7 numbers.
We've got a
Yeah, I
5-digit
think
area
our
code,
area
haven't we?
code, yeah, 5-digit, and then you've got a
6,
6-digit
yeah.
number
Oh.
that comes after that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, could you imagine getting to number 10, like
like-
messing it up, and then being like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I
But
don't
that
even
might
care
have been
anymore.
a really good qualifier, right? Like, so it's not like shooting off a text when you're really pissed. Like, if you've got to call somebody and tell them you're really pissed at them, but then you get through 10 numbers, you're like, I'm not mad anymore.
Yeah. That's what it was. There was no immediate rage text
No.
or anything like that. Nothing that you regretted because you had so much time to think about it before you sent them out.
I mean, this is the thing. Josh has brought really good reasons for what would, why the phones are good. Like, for example, all the money and space saving. For me, though, the one thing the cell phone has taken away is the angry hang up. You can't slam your phone down anymore. You can't show your disgust with someone. You could push the screen really hard, but that doesn't do anything.
No, see, I've perfected it because I've done it to him when I've been mad. You just hang up mid talk. So like you just
And you just get
Yep.
the click.
and you're all done.
See, but if you're in public, it would have never have been as epic because this sound was not as good as, like one of those phones hitting the hook
Yep.
in the middle of an office. You got the butching as you.
Do you know the
hit
trick with
phone
those
down.
ones were as well is you'd have to hit it down with the speaker bit first, so you made it even worse for the person listening if you hit that bit first.
All right, so I've got your money making idea here, y'all. An app that makes that sound. So it's just you always have it on hand. You all have it ready. And when you want to do an angry phone hang up, then you open the app and boom, it makes the noise. There you go. One
Amazing.
million pound idea for
That
you
is
right
brilliant.
Everything's so subtle about phones now, aren't they?
Can I just say though, because originally this was supposed to be about if phones disappeared, so I kind of want to go into that, but I want to just set the precedent first. Would we say, okay, as of tomorrow, the rest of the world stays exactly as is, but mobile phones disappear? Are we going on that basis?
Yeah,
Yeah, because I've thought about all of the things now that never would have taken technology to do, but now technology has made it convoluted. So I don't know what it's like in the States, but now basically, if you want to park anywhere in England, you need one of about 16 different parking apps because you can't put cash in machines anymore for some reason. So immediately, it's created a problem where you wouldn't have used to have needed one. So I went for a walk around a park yesterday with my girlfriend, and we got there, and again, it was one of the many apps in my phone that I just didn't have. I've got to download an app, download this, put a code in, when it would have just taken me £2 in a machine before. So to me, that we've created so many problems. It's like, how often do you get offered a physical receipt in a shop now? Instead of them saying, oh, we'll email it to you, and then they spell my email wrong because my surname's complicated, and I never get a receipt in the end, so I actually can't return it when I just wanted the piece of paper in hand. It's things like that now that we've turned around and said, oh, because everybody's got a phone in hand, we can make these things easier. But in reality, it's not more practical, really.
and it doesn't cater for signal failures either.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's again sporting events. You don't actually get physical tickets now.
Yeah.
So you're sitting at the barrier struggling for signal on your phone, when in reality, if I just had a physical ticket, I would have no problem with it. And that's the thing. I feel like there are loads of things that practically phones have taken away from us, that phones have taken things away from us, or people have thought that phones have made things more convenient, when in actual fact, it's much
We had
more
that
of an
here with
inconvenience.
COVID when the initial lockdowns subsided and people then could travel. They were saying, you've got your COVID pass. It was our NHS app. But I remember one week, on one day, the app failed, it crashed, and you couldn't open it. And then like saying, well, you've got to print it out. And people are saying, but that defeats the whole point of having an app on your phone because we're trying to get away from printing everything. And so, yeah, the one that when people started traveling, the NHS app went down and you couldn't get your COVID pass out.
Well, think about this though. So, Lou, what you're talking about is inconvenience. One thing that we haven't discussed is how this technology creates a barrier to people who can't afford it.
Mm-hmm.
So now are we saying that those people who don't, for whatever reason, have a smartphone, they can't park? They've got the money. I've got the money right here, but I have no way of giving it to you because I don't have, because now there's this gatekeeper, an app that I don't have. And this is, talking about all of the different things that the phone replaces, banking, needing to go to the library or have access even to information or to news. Those are all barriers to people who can't afford it
or can't so it's an issue of equity for sure for people who can't afford it or can't make it, like our senior population can't make it work.
Yeah.
And
We've still
so
got a
Well, this is the
huge,
thing.
huge part of the population. Yeah, I was going to say, like, my mum, she is very, very much not technological at all. Ironically, she does use a cell phone, but she uses, when my dad died 9 years ago, she's still using his one. And that phone itself is probably 4 or 5 years old. And I think there's an element of obviously attachment to that phone.
sure.
She uses a landline and she calls her sister in Italy, and
Mhm.
it's an expensive bill, and we're saying to her, look, get a cell phone, it'll be much better for you, but she just doesn't want to
Mhm.
learn at her age
Mhm.
how to use it. And fair play, I'm not going to do
It's
it, but yeah,
scary.
yeah, and you tell her to go to a park, a car park, and then pay by
Mhm.
app. There's no chance she'll avoid going out or to those
Mhm.
places,
Yeah.
and that's a
Well, yeah.
sad thing.
Well, this is the thing. There's actually a town near us. So the town that me and my grandmother live in, or Dan's mum, live in, isn't particularly brilliant for shopping. I would say there's not really many shops here. It's a relatively
If you
small
want a
town.
coffee, it's brilliant.
Oh yeah, if you want a coffee, amazing. But anything more than that, no chance whatsoever. You can't buy a shirt. You can't buy anything else here. But the town over implemented a system. I think it came over COVID, where now you can't pay with cash.
Mhm.
You either have to pay with like your phone or an app. So as a result, my grandmother pre-COVID would have gone there because it's a short drive away, but now doesn't because she literally doesn't have the
Mhm.
facility to pay
Mhm.
using the methods that they require. And so as a result, it's just completely life limiting
Yeah.
now because she can only go where she knows has the facility for her to put coins in a machine. And I think that's a bit crap
Yeah.
in reality because no one's given the option anymore.
Yeah, and there's the whole thing where I work in teacher development, right? So I work for a university here and I write professional development for teachers, but the majority of our professional development is online, right? And the majority of our teachers take them via their phones, but it still presents there's an equity of access issue for, do I have the connectivity to be able to upload assignments? Do I have the connectivity to be able to download what I need to do? And so it really does set apart a whole set of people for different reasons to being able to access things.
Again, even on that, like I think here, again, I don't know what the access to doctors, general practitioners is like in the US or how you go about
They
booking
cost us a
doctor's
lot of
appointments. But
money.
now, well, this is the thing. We hear stories and we read articles about it in the States and we're like
Even when you
flabbergasted.
have insurance. Yes, go ahead.
Because that's the thing. I feel like insurance doesn't actually cover everything. It's like a baseline and then there's additional things. So what would be like the cost to just see a doctor because you've just got an ailment? Sorry, we're going off on a tangent
Right.
now, but
So I went to the doctor a couple weeks ago. It was a $25 copay. So I have an insurance that I pay maybe $100 every paycheck. So $200 a month if I get paid biweekly for our family plan. But then you have a deductible that's say $1,000 for the family. So if I haven't met my deductible yet, any lab work, I broke my foot a couple years ago and all of my x-rays, everything, I had to pay for all that out of pocket until I hit my $1,000. And then we would have to pay a percentage, like 80%. If the doctor was in network, they would pay 80, we pay 20. If the doctor was out of network, it would flip. So our son was born and stayed 5 days in NICU, right? So he's 5 now. I just finished paying off his NICU bill when he turned 4. And that's with
wow.
insurance.
Wow.
Well, this is the thing. I feel like in the UK, we're like kind of shielded from it because we hear like articles where people have been charged like $78 for a plaster after they were in
Oh
hospital.
yeah.
Or I think there was the most recent like big like not scandal, but was skin to skin contact for a mother
Yeah,
that had given birth.
yeah,
And
yeah.
there was like a charge of like $80 for it, and I thought to myself, that is crazy in and
That's
of
for her
itself.
holding her own baby.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
know.
and,
which
and there
is
are things here
yeah.
like ibuprofen, which is the brand name Advil. But if you got it through the doctor or the hospital, would be this astronomical cost. Whereas if we just walk to the drugstore, it's $10 for a bottle of 50 or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I mean, even like with drugs and prescriptions here, like they're like a set at a fixed price. So you still pay for drugs, but what the government does is they basically subside it. So irrespective of what you have, an item on a prescription would cost you, I think, was it now £9, I
It's
think,
probably £9 or
per
£10.
item.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's gone up slowly. And originally, it was actually not even that. Originally, it was if you had a prescription, it could have 10 items on it. and you'd only pay the one fee. And it's only in recent
Yeah.
years changed that it's now per
Mhm.
item, I think. And that was actually a really huge
Wow,
story when
yeah.
it went to per item, because they looked at it and thought, well, somebody who now needs potentially X amount of bottles of medication is now paying 4 times based on each item on their prescription.
Prescription drugs
But
here, though,
yeah,
I know we've digressed a little bit, but prescription drugs here are it's a racket. My dad had leukemia, and his prescription was, so he didn't have radiation or chemotherapy. He took a prescription for his leukemia, and that's like thousands of dollars a month. And you have people who don't have decent health care that are just going into debt to be able to pay for just their prescriptions.
yeah, because this thing, is there any hospitals in the States or kind of doctors in the States that are just funded and or free based on like income, that sort of thing?
So we have a couple things. We have Medicaid and Medicare. Medicare is for a senior population. Medicaid would
Okay.
be for someone who is on disability or children whose parents didn't have insurance. So it's like qualifying life events, right? And then if you're a veteran, if you served the country in
Right,
military service, then but it's not free, but it's not the NHS. You still have to pay percentages of it.
There are like certain free clinics that are.
So they're like, yeah, there are public health clinics. They're subsidized, but the availability,
Of course.
level of care is not the same.
Right, okay. I feel like we could open into a completely new episode. I
So
feel like
sorry,
It
you
would
might
be
want to
another
turn around and
save
say-
that for when you.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. we could do an episode. But sorry, can I just use my example? Because there was actually an example coming there when it came to modern things. So again, COVID changed the way that a lot of public services worked as well. So I think one of the biggest one was doctors, and your ability to see doctors. So even now, if I want a prescription, irrespective of whether or not it's something that's been ordered before, it's all online now, which again is difficult for the access to someone like my grandmother who doesn't have a mobile phone where she can just pop immediately on the website and book an appointment. Because even when you ring doctor's surgeries up now, they say, oh, well, you need to book an appointment through the app. And it's like, how do you expect my 70-odd-year-old grandmother who doesn't have a smartphone to do that? So in the end, you just walk in and they have to then turn around and get you an appointment because you've walked into the surgery. And that's the thing. I think that over the COVID period has really created a difficult barrier for people that don't have access to the technology, to kind of do things that were normal.
I did just want to ask Josh and Amanda a question, though, because I'm just keeping an eye on the time, and we'll probably unfortunately need to start wrapping up, because I should give yourselves. I feel bad. I should have asked you at the start to talk about your podcast, so we'll do that a little bit towards the end as well. I mean, I just wanted to get straight into the conversation with you, but going back to say the phone thing again, as parents of kids, if you did lose that ability to be able to get a text from them or to call them, how comfortable or uncomfortable would that initially make you feel? Because as I said, when I was a kid, I'd be going out like from 5 p.m. probably till 8 or 9, and my mum wouldn't see me or even worry about me, not in a bad way, for those hours. So how ingrained is being able to contact your kids?
It's pretty ingrained, but I actually put a lot of thought to this, and Amanda, you can answer. It
Thank
seems
you
to
for your
me
permission. Love you.
it seems to me that if cell phones went away, that the temperature of our world would decrease.
You don't mean the physical temperature.
I don't. Sorry, boys. I think that a lot of the things that have been going on have been driven by technology. The escalation of mean-spirited rhetoric, the crudification of society, if you will. I'd be willing to bet that it would be very difficult initially, but I think in general, maybe our society would become a nicer place to live, a safer place to live. The reality is that these cell phones have segmented us, they have isolated us, and they have crippled us in a way from having face-to-face relationships or seeking them out or needing to be in places where you bump into folks and you form relationships. And so I'd be willing to bet if technology started to recede a little bit, that we'd be forced to make connections, and maybe our world would not be such a scary place to live.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
I I agree with that to an extent, but I also I've thought a lot about this too. So I grew up, my high school experience, there were not cell phones. I graduated from high school in 93. I mean, there were cell phones, but like they weren't part of our world, right? So if I was out with friends or at a friend's house, my mom had to be able to track me down to tell me something. And there's
Yeah.
something really lovely about not being reachable. And I think about that a lot. Like I'd really like to not be reachable. I'd really like to, it worked really well for me, but now as a parent of a teenager, of teenagers, as a person with anxiety, um I like being able to immediately be able to reach my child or know where my child is if they're not responding, which a lot of times they don't. Um but at the same time, I feel like maybe if that wasn't a thing that I was able to do, then that anxiety would sort of level off. That expectation of being able to do that would maybe level off.
I'm wondering, yeah, is it like a vicious circle in that you you want say I'm not saying you do this, but say as a parent you want your kid to text you at 6 p.m. to know they're okay, and that doesn't come in at 6 p.m. so you start stressing about that, and then the text comes in at 6:30 because they were busy having fun.
Mhm.
But if you weren't in a position where that could happen, you'd be like, I'm sure they're fine. I'm sure they're fine. You can get hung up on the fact that you can have everything right there and then,
Yeah.
and if it doesn't come in right there and then that's when the yeah, kind of the mind starts sort of playing the tricks on you.
Well, I remember like my mum and dad talking about it when they used to go out, because obviously they were in a time where they didn't have mobile phones. And, my grandmother, even now at the big age of 26, if I go out for a drink with my friends, she'll turn around and be like, be careful,
Mhm.
make sure you do
Mhm.
this, you'll do this. Even when I was out at the pub on the Saturday, I got a phone call from my grandmother. I was like, I'm in the
That's so
pub, please,
cute,
I'll call you a bit
though. I
later
love
on.
that.
So, okay, yeah,
But
yeah, I'll leave you alone
even
for
for
now.
me now, say sometimes I don't know if it's a thing over in the States, but here even my mum will still do it. Sometimes if you're going on a long journey,
Yeah.
she'll say, "Oh, just call me when you get there," or just
Sure.
let the let the phone ring once, just to let me know you've got there. And
Oh
it's like,
God, I
fine, I'll
forgot
do
about
it
the
to
let the
make you
phone ring
happy.
once. That used to be a thing.
Yeah,
I forgot about that
yeah,
because you
yeah,
didn't want the long distance charges, right? But if you let it ring once, I forgot
yeah.
about that. My mom would do that too. So if we went to visit, and it's only a 2 hour drive, it'd be call me when you got there. And my mom passed away in 2020, and I still catch myself even now at 47 and being, the parent of older children, wanting to call my mom and let her know that I got there safely because it's so ingrained.
Yeah, no, and that's it, and that's the thing that they do, and say I'm at my mum's house late for whatever reason, even though I'm only a 20-minute drive, she'll want to know that I've got home safely, which is
Mhm.
absolutely, like you said, it's lovely. Now, if she had a phone, I could just text her and say, "Mum, I'm home."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the thing is, as well, do you know what's been funny is like previously, there's been instances where Dan hasn't picked his phone up, and then my grandmother has called me to say, "Have
Yes.
you heard from your uncle?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I don't know. He might be, he might be on the toilet or in the shower or something. He might just not be able to get to the phone." But it's an immediate panic
Mhm.
because that phone hasn't been answered now. And it's a bit like, again, the example that I was going to give was I turned around and even my grandmother will tell me to be careful because the world's a terrible place now and that sort of thing. But I feel like with the rise of technology and the ability to get news quicker
Yes.
and more of it to you, are we just maybe exposed more to bad things that happen? So for instance, my mum would now be, I think if I was the age of 14 now, she would be really worried that I went out on my bike and just got snatched or
Mhm.
something like that. But in reality, is that not just because the instances in which you hear about these terrible things
It's
are
more
more
of them.
often because you just didn't,
100%.
yeah,
They're
because you
reported
used
more.
to
It's
have to read a
reported more.
newspaper, yeah, whereas you used to have to go out and either be on the news channel at which that story broke, or you needed to read a
The-
newspaper to see it, whereas now it pops up on your phone as a Sky News alert that says, oh, X thing happened
Mhm.
in London here, or X thing happened in Northumbria here.
When I went to school, you probably didn't have them. We had videos saying if there's a man outside wanting to, and I'm not joking, with puppies saying, "Oh, I've got more puppies at home if you want to come. Don't get in his car if there's a stranger offering you sweets
Don't get
outside."
the candy, right? Yes.
Yeah, and then I remember, I'll never forget, there was once a video of who do you think is trustworthy or not, and then they'd show like a grizzled man with a scar down his face, and the next would be like a policeman, and it's like we had these videos, so these things have always happened. These horrible crimes have always happened, But yeah, like you said, you don't see them. You didn't see them, or you had to go out your way to find them.
Because that's the thing. It would have never have been untoward for my dad, for instance, to go out and play with his friends, and my grandparents just not to expect him back until dinner was ready. So he'd be out for like an 8 hour window. Whereas now, I feel like in that 8 hour window, it's true. You want like a reassurance that everything's fine, even though in reality, this is the circumstance any different as it was potentially 40 years ago? It's the same event, but now we've got the facility for some form of like confirmation that everything's fine, if that
Mhm.
makes sense, or assurance almost. So now that's what we seek.
Yep.
Going back to what you said though about where mum couldn't get me, yeah, because she did the same thing recently this week. So my mum couldn't get hold of her sister in Italy. She was worried, so she then tried to get hold of my cousin in Italy. He didn't answer, so she called me up. Could I WhatsApp him? So I WhatsApped him in Italy, who then called her, and it was the same with you, Lou, wasn't it? You then WhatsApped me, and
Yeah.
I saw the phone lead had come out the jack in the wall, and it's like, see, technology is really good. It's just my mum doesn't have that ability to do it herself.
You guys need to check in with your mom frequently.
She just doesn't, like I said, she's just not very technical. But it's just, it goes back to what we were saying, that you can't start making these sweeping changes because
No.
there are still a huge part of our population which, they don't really know how some of these devices are working.
Lou, I had a similar situation with my mom before she had advanced dementia. Before she had to go into a facility, my nephew lived with her. And he took the remote and taped off all the buttons except for on, off, and like the channel changing up and down. Like we had to start limiting her, availability to mess up technology because, yeah. So, but it was the same way. If he was going to go out with friends and didn't come home, there was hell to be caught, even though he was 20 something, whatever. So, yeah.
See, this is the thing. Maybe it's just because they always care.
Yep.
Yeah,
They
well,
That's
always
because
right.
care.
Lou's my sister is older than me. I'm still the baby.
Hmm.
I'm still a baby. When she talks to people, I'm still a baby. That's the thing. It's like, I'm 45
I
this year.
mean, that's I still think of you as the baby as well.
That's
So
right. Well, it was the same for
Bless you,
me. My
bless you.
siblings are much older, so my nephew's only 6 years younger than I am. So even though, he's younger, he's still not that much younger than I am. So he was living with her in his 20s, and she would call me. Have you heard from Jason? I'm like, I don't, why? So then you do the thing where you start tracking the people down.
from 3 hours away.
Right.
But do you know what it is though as well? Even with phones, like because I've bought into it as well. It's like if your sister or your mum doesn't tell you that they've gone out somewhere and they're just not where you expect them to be at a particular time, would you have panicked back when you didn't have access to a phone? Because then you ring them. So I remember my mum had just gone shopping on a different day. This was a couple of years ago now, so I was 24, but still probably not old enough to have warranted the panic because I wasn't a teenager or a child. But she'd just gone shopping on a different day, and I remember ringing her phone, didn't get an answer. I was just like, "What's happened? Like, it must be something. Must have gone. There must be an emergency somewhere." Text, no response, no response. She walks through the door. She was like, "Oh, I forgot my phone." But I just went shopping. I was just like, why did you do it on a different day? I was not expecting you to
No,
do this.
definitely,
But
because
again, it was like a panic that was created in my
we
mind
always were on our
because I had the
phones.
facility.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the
Sorry, we're
thing. So
always
because
with
I
our
didn't get that
phones. Yeah.
assurance,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't get the assurance, and all of a sudden it created a panic in my mind. When in reality, it's like if I was younger and I didn't have access to a mobile phone, I just wouldn't have assumed anything bad because I would have just had to have, I would have just reasoned with
Right.
myself and said, "Oh, she's just gone out to X or gone out to do Y." But that moment created panic in my mind because I used my phone, which is the thing that you should use when you want to check on someone. I didn't get a response, and then all of a sudden it was the worst thing in the world. No, she just left her phone at
But
home
it's only
before
because
going
you
shopping
care.
because she just went in a rush. Yeah, this is also true. This is also
Right.
true.
I kind of want to start wrapping up, I think, unfortunately. Was there anything else you wanted to say specifically about phones disappearing before we
We
do?
should keep them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that we should keep them, but we should only have the social media stuff on actual computers. So if the
Agreed.
social media came off the phones and we just used them as phones and texting, I'd
I
be
want to
so
keep
about
it,
it.
if
Yeah.
only because I can then continue to get random videos from Josh, which I'm
Oh
keeping in
God, I'm
case we
so
ever have a
sorry.
falling out. No, in case we ever have a falling out, I'm keeping those videos. That's
I put those videos out on the TikTok, so there's no shame over here.
Can I just say as well, do you know when you talked about deleting memes from your camera roll? Could you imagine a point in time if phones disappeared tomorrow, you wanted to show someone a meme, but you had to get it developed first? Like you're like posting it through your mate's letterbox. You're like, look at what I saw.
It loses something in losing the immediacy,
It's like-
doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like, you know what? We need to start doing that. I'm gonna start doing that at work. I'm just gonna bring physical memes into the office.
I love
I
it.
think that's
Or
brilliant.
no,
We need to
just
do
we'll
that.
just be either like you'll describe it to them, right? So it's like they'll say something and you'll say, "Well, Kermit the Frog holding a tea glass would say this," or you just act them out like a damn fool.
Yeah, it loses something.
Yeah, there's a particular gif on in our group which we it would probably be slightly odd to describe, but that poor fish, let's just say that. Right. So, Josh and Amanda, I feel terrible because I didn't ask you this at the start, but do you want to tell us about your podcast and also where people can find you and your
That's all you.
socials? But yeah, let know a little bit about what you get up to.
Well, don't feel terrible because this is not a transactional thing. We really, really just enjoyed it. So don't feel terrible. We are super familiar with the Wilsons. Our podcast is, I mean, it's kind of like this.
Pretty much this.
Just chatting about things. Although recently we've kind of added the twist where we talk to experts, so you don't have to. Because although I love doing comedy and I love building little audio bits and this and that, I do want to leave the world a better place. So we're trying to teach people stuff through our idiot humor. But you just search Super Familiar with the Wilsons wherever you get podcasts, and that's where you'll find us.
And you've got, I have to say, a genius mind for quizzes as well. Your music quiz. I have to say that.
Yeah, I enjoy giving the music quizzes. Y'all will have to come on so you can take a music quiz.
Well, I want to. I want to be part of a Wilson quiz. I definitely do. I definitely do.
Absolutely.
His mind works in wonderful ways, Lou.
Do you know what it is as well? I feel like we could do a really good culture clash episode as well, because I feel like the talk about even like hospitals and that sort of thing
Yeah.
could have been a really cool perspective thing.
Well, we
And I
did
feel
we
like that
did
could be a
food with
really great
Brendan
topic.
from Unchef. We could do everything else.
Yeah. This is true. Yeah, like we get like the culture fusion. This is
There you go.
brilliant.
That'll have to be a month-long series that y'all do after the what ifs.
That's it. See, now we don't even need to think about it, because me and Dan, when we think about ideas for podcasts, we basically Dan sends a WhatsApp and says, this is what I thought about. I think about it and then spend 3 days looking at my phone at what Dan's already said and think, yeah, okay, let's just do this. Because I'm blank. I'm sitting there being like, shit, I've got no ideas.
Well, the thing is, Josh is already, because he's my American person that I fire all questions. In America, do they do this? In America, so he is that person for me.
I've seen this in X film. Is this actually
That's right.
really what
That's
goes
right.
on?
So when I next go to the States, my whole experience is going to be based on what Josh has told me. So I'm
Oh.
hoping he's telling me the truth.
Christ, you should see how I maneuver life around here, and I've been here for a long time. Definitely don't model it after me.
Okay, I was actually going to say before we go, I did forget to say it in the episode, but I was looking at the internet, right? Again, how recent the internet is, in kind of real terms. So again, this is in the UK. So in 2003, only 47% of the UK had internet access.
And that would have been like limited as access as well, I imagine.
Yeah, but I remember using the internet at college. So that would have been 96, 95, 96. So, so even then, sort of 7 years later, it was still less than half the UK households, which I think is amazing. And only 58% had a PC, which is, we're only talking 19 years ago. It's not that long. So I found that quite surprising. When we've just been talking about the proliferation of like cell phones, the technology that came before it that created all that was only, is only even itself was only 19 years. If you think about it, 2007 the iPhone launched. 2003 only 50% of us had internet.
Well, it's an interesting thing, and it's probably grist for another episode. But the speed at which technology is advancing seems to just be getting faster and faster.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like in my lifetime, even with when you look at things like cars, like, mum and dad petrol cars, now it's going electric, now it's going, like, even when you look at houses now, a lot more houses are getting solar panels on them to run entire houses. The way that phones have worked, like, even in my short lifetime, I've gone from a mobile phone that takes a couple of songs and a 2 megapixel camera to now one that takes better professional photos than photographers and has entire music libraries on it. It's crazy.
But yet we can't stay cool in our own houses over here. So
But this is what it is. We're actually 20 years behind you guys. I'm being
You need
serious.
to
When it comes to
download the
convenience.
iFan.
I'm doing it tonight. Right, Josh, Amanda, any final words? Always sounds bad when you say it. Any final words from yourself
These are
before we
my
go?
last words I will ever say. Thank you for having us.
There's another good episode idea. Just last words.
Yeah.
That is actually a really good episode.
It's
Actually,
like
I'm
4
making
words
that. Yeah.
long.
I'm making that. I'm writing that down. Yeah. No, cheers for coming on and giving us 2 hours of your Sunday. Lou, anything from
And also a month worth of episode ideas.
yeah, Lou, anything from you before we go?
No, although I just think it's really funny because in reality, do you know Apple? They just killed the iPod with the iPhone.
Yeah.
Because I remember iPods were like a huge thing, and then people had iPhones, and they were like, "Why am I spending 69p or 79p on a song when I can just have an iPhone and do it free?" And now nobody has an iPod. I actually considered buying a really old one just for the sake of looking retro when I went on the tube.
That's great. Digital hipster. That's great.
Do you know what it is? Yeah, Dan's idea of being retro is like vinyl records on a record player. My idea of retro is a swirly iPod. Do you know where you had that circle in the middle and you scrolled through songs like that? That's my idea
And the
of
iPhone
proper
1
retro,
from
that
15
is.
years
The
ago.
iPhone
Right.
1. I'm gonna buy an iPhone 3G.
Right. Okay. So,
Might get a Motorola Razr out.
we'll see you next week. We know there's a lot of podcasts from which you could choose. So we thank you for listening to Casting Views.